Hello and welcome back. This space has had a bit of a revamp, a bit of a change since I last posted on here. I wanted to have a bit of a fresh start with this. I feel like I was losing a bit of motivation and kind of losing sight of what my purpose was in making this space. So after giving myself the time to reflect and, aptly so reflect, I feel like I'm better able to approach what it is that I want to do with this space. I've decided to call it my reflective space, and I hope to reflect, in case that wasn't super obvious. And it's pretty similar to what I wanted to do before. I still want to talk about very similar topics and share my reflections. I still want to talk about psychology and mental health and research. Those are all things that are of interest to me, and I hope that I will learn more about it through this space. But in the spirit of fresh starts and that being my biggest reflection as of recently, I wanted to talk a bit about fresh starts in general and why at least I found them to be so helpful, especially when trying to work towards my goals and trying to do the things I want to do and find the motivation to do those things. I think in general, what comes to mind for me when I think about fresh starts is New Year's and New Year's resolutions, and thinking about goals that we might have and how we want to approach them and what we want to do, why we want to achieve it. I think New Year's is the most salient because it's the time where we kind of collectively all, at least majority of us, celebrate that change in time. There's these set rituals that we have, like resolutions and doing all of these things leading up to New Year's, that I think makes it the most salient point in time where we would want to make change and want to have a fresh start. And looking into that further, I found this concept in psychology called the fresh start effect, or what they've dubbed the fresh start effect. I don't know if that's a technical term or not. What the fresh start effect is our kind of tendency to be more motivated and aligned with our goals and actually take action towards those goals following some sort of prominent time-based event. So that could be something like New Year's. It could also be something as small as like the start of a new month, the start of a new season, the start of a new week even. I think it's kind of quite a new concept, so I don't think we know a lot about why this is the case. At least I couldn't find much on it in my research. But I do think it's still useful to learn about and think about when we might be in a place where we want to have a fresh start and want to start again. I know that a lot of the time in the past, I've kind of waited for these more salient events like New Year's to make change, especially in like December, where I just feel like I have all these goals for the next year, and in my head I'm like, I can't make any change towards these goals until after New Year's, because it's like a New Year's resolution, that's the whole thing. But like really, when you think about that doesn't, like, there's no limitation there. I could start whatever I want to do at any point in time, and I don't have to wait for that sort of event to do something. But at the same time, I think it's something that we can perhaps use in our favor. We might not have to wait for these more salient, or like New Year's, for example, we don't have to wait for these times in order to make change in our life and in order to start again. I think if you're in a position where you want to make change, the question might be, how can you create those fresh starts for you in your own life? The benefits of having these fresh starts is that you get an opportunity to reflect and reevaluate your approach towards your goals, and maybe even think about whether the goals are actually what you want anymore, and make change towards your pursuit of them. But say you're in a position where like right now it's the middle of the year, New Year's isn't for a while, motivation can be lacking to work towards our goals and what we want to achieve. So creating these fresh starts for ourselves can be one way in which we can still maintain that motivation to work towards where we want to be, and not feel like we're bound to the calendar or things like New Year's to get us by and to make those bigger changes in our lives. I think for me, I've even seen the benefit of that just through having a fresh start with this whole podcast. You know, I feel that I have so much clearer of a vision in terms of what I want for this space. I want it to be reflective, and that was something that I didn't really know was that important to me when I started the first time, but something I've realized is really important to me and something I want to incorporate and encourage. I think it is so beneficial to reflect on our lives, and it doesn't have to be this challenging thing. I think it can be or seem really mentally taxing, but I hope through this space that maybe I can break it down a bit more and encourage more reflection. But that's something that I only really figured out through trying it the first time, and having that fresh start has allowed me to take a step back and realize that this is something I want to incorporate alongside more research and evidence-based ideas and concepts. For me as well, I think in terms of creating fresh starts, one thing that I try to do, especially when it comes to reflecting, because I think this is such a key component of having a fresh start and starting again, is reflecting, you know, what is going well, what isn't. But for me, I try to create those smaller fresh starts throughout the year, and they're still like time-based. So for example, things like my birthday, even just like the start of a new month. Like one thing that I was doing for a while was every month I would set myself like 3 small goals that I wanted to achieve that would help me work towards my bigger goal. So say if one of my goals was to exercise more, then that month it might be just like go to the gym at least one time every week. Something like that, where I broke the bigger goal down into smaller goals, and then I focused it each month on what I actually wanted to do in that month. And also thinking about the previous month, like if I set myself the goal of going 3 times a week and I didn't do it, then maybe thinking about how can I change that goal now that I have this opportunity to reflect and make it a bit more realistic, so that I can actually achieve it. Other like salient times of year for me, this is I guess more of a personal one, but Diwali is a big time of year. I don't really know why. As I've been getting older, I think it's just one of those points of the year for me where I take some time to think about how my year is going, especially like still being in education and having Diwali come not too long after the start of the academic year. It's a nice checkpoint to reflect on things and change things if I need to. So I think reflecting on what those fresh starts could be for you throughout the year, and maybe there's more cultural or tradition-based periods of the year where you can create those fresh starts for yourself and not be so reliant on New Year's as like a landmark. I'm not saying everybody has New Year's as their like salient landmark, but I do think it's one of the more common ones, which is why I'm using it as an example. But there are so many moments throughout the year where we can create those fresh starts for ourselves and make sure that we are working towards the goals that we have in a way that works for us, because it might be that when we set those goals at the start of the year and we get to this point like where we are now mid-year and we think, I don't really feel like I'm working towards those goals, I don't think I'm making change. As much as it's important to have those specific goals, me personally, I think it's even more important to have that kind of mental flexibility and allow the way you approach your goals to change throughout the year. And I think one of the biggest and only ways that we can really evaluate whether something is working for us is through reflecting and being honest with ourselves about how our approach has been to these goals that we're trying to pursue, and whether or not it is functional, whether or not it is helpful. So one of the things that I want to do in each episode, hopefully, is provide one or a few reflective prompts that will hopefully encourage the reflection of the topic that I want to talk about in the episode. So as we're talking about fresh starts, I wanted to give a few questions that you could ask yourself to facilitate that reflection. It might even be that you don't feel like you need a fresh start, but you could still have a think about these questions and maybe find that there are some areas of your life where you could be having a fresh start. I think the best place to start is with the past. So I guess the first question would be, how have things been going? So what has been going well? What have you been enjoying? What actions or activities or things that you've been doing are making you feel good or helping you to work towards whatever goals you've set for yourself? And then what have been the challenges? So, what things have been preventing you from working towards your goals, whether that's like a mindset, a belief, situation, like environmentally, something that might be preventing you. I think that's a good place to start in order to think about how can we make change from there. I think once you have a better idea of what it is that you're struggling with or that might be more difficult, it's easier to approach thinking about how you can make change from there. So maybe the next or final question would even be, what do I want to change? Is there anything from the things that you've been finding difficult that you want to make change on and you don't want to stay the same? Equally, there might be things where it's like, say you have this goal, but environmentally it's just not working out for you. Like maybe you're not in the right environment. Like I can't think of what that goal might be, but say there's things that are kind of out of your control that might be preventing you from working towards your goals. Maybe the question is like whether that goal is still right for you at this stage in your life, or maybe your focus can be more towards the goals that you can actually work towards and achieve. And I think in terms of fresh starts, maybe giving yourself a more consistent time throughout every month or season even, where you take that time to reflect and ask yourself those same questions, to make sure that you're on the right track and you're doing the best that you can be to get to where you want to be, and also to help you sustain that motivation. I do think change during those periods of busyness and kind of throughout the year, giving yourself those checkpoints can be really helpful, to prevent you from kind of losing focus and losing sight of what it is that you want to be doing. So perhaps for you, that's kind of what I was talking about before. Maybe it's every month, setting yourself maybe 15 minutes to just think about those 3 questions. It could even be every week, every Monday can sometimes feel like a new start, or even Sunday, like the start of a new week can feel like a fresh start, and an opportunity to reflect. So you don't have to ask yourself those same questions, but those can be a good starting point to think about change and how you want to approach your goals, and whether you're in need of a fresh start. The most important things to take away and remember when you're giving yourself a fresh start is perhaps to see it as an opportunity to experiment and try new things, create change, and take a different approach to the things that you want to do or the way you're approaching life in general, and not see it as fixed. Like it might be that you do this checkpoint every few months and you realize that every single time the way that you're approaching it is changing. And that can feel frustrating, but ultimately I think it is better for us than to leave it so long before we reflect on how we can approach things in a new way. I also just think viewing it as an opportunity to try something new and to challenge yourself to do something differently is so much more rewarding, because if it doesn't work or your new approach still isn't helping you to get to where you want to be, it was just a trial, it was just an experiment, and you still get that opportunity to change course and try something different. There really is no point where you have to stop trying new, different avenues. And I think maybe this is also just the kind of person that I am. I don't like to give up on things, and I feel like I try my best to keep pushing forward in spite of challenges that might come up. And I think when it comes to fresh starts, this is a really important mindset to have, or one that can be really useful to have. And I don't think it's easy all of the time to maintain that. And I'm not saying that I have that mindset every single time that something goes wrong or I'm struggling or something is challenging. But I do think that as best as you can, trying to keep that flexibility in mind and just allowing things to be, and maybe they don't work, but you have that fresh start to look forward to and to try again. There really is no time where you can't start again. Every single month, week, day is an opportunity to start again, and there is no timeline on any of this. So yeah, I think remembering that you can create those fresh starts for yourself at any point throughout the year and build those landmarks throughout the year where you can kind of have a checkpoint to reflect and maybe reevaluate your approach. Like knowing that you have that is so freeing and powerful, I think. So yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you were able to take something from this episode, and I look forward to reflecting with you next time.